G'day guys, how you going? We're back again. Today we're going to talk about the tools we need and getting set up to be able to do some dynamic web development work on your laptop. So in the last video about the difference between dynamic and static web content, talked about some of the tools you need. You need a web server. Apache is the web server that we're going to use. You need a database server. MySQL is the database server we're going to need. Because we're going to use PHP, we're going to need a PHP interpreter. And they all come bundled in. There's a number of tools that do this sort of stuff, but one of the common ones is this tool called XAMPP, or some people pronounce it XAMPP, either way. It includes all of those tools as a single installation which you install on your single computer, in this case your laptop, and it gives us all the stuff we're going to need to be able to do our web development. And it's produced by Apache friends. Now you can download the latest version from here, but we're not going to download it. I've sent you an email. It's got a link in it in the portal that you can download the version, the stable version that we're all going to use. So we're all working on the same version. So when you go and grab that, click on the link, you'll get a zip file like this, which you'll extract. And when you've extracted it, you'll get just a normal standard folder looking like this guy with the installer sitting inside of it. So I'm just going to run the installer. Yes, I do want to run that. And then from there we step through a reasonably normal sort of install process, but there are a couple of little tricks that you need to be aware of. So yes, we've got an antivirus running, that's okay, and we're going to get some user account control messages, so we've got to make sure we do the right things here. So I'm just stepping through so far, and I'm going to say next. I'm going to install all the components, leave all those things ticked, and next. Really important, you must put this in where it wants to go, in the root of C drive. It'll go and create this folder called XAMPP. So yeah, that's fine, I want to do that. I'm going to untick this guy. XAMPP can do lots of things, and I can have lots of different plugins for WordPress and Joomla and stuff. I'm going to untick that because I'm not concerned about that at this stage. And then I'm just going to go next, and it's going to go through and install. So it's going to take a little while to install. So I'm going to pause the video from here and come back when we're getting close to the end of this, and we'll continue on. Okay, so we're just nearing the end of the installation here. A little green bar is almost all the way across. So we'll just wait for that to finish. And then we'll show you a few of the things that you need to know to be able to run XAMPP and use it on your computer. And there's a few things that you need to know to be able to have it running. This is a really important thing. There's a couple of issues with XAMPP where it wants to be allowed to work through the firewall, the Windows firewall on your machine. So I'm going to tick yes. I want to allow it through private networks such as my home or work network. So that's important. I'm going to say yes and allow access. And so that's allowing the Apache web server to run on your computer. And when we try and launch the MySQL database server, we'll get the same thing. And we'll have to allow it as well. So do I want to start the control panel now? I'm going to say yes, leave that ticked, and finish. And what I get shown is the XAMPP control panel, which hides away down here as well in your notifications area. So you know that it's running. If I close it, for instance, it's still down here in my notifications area. Sometimes it might hide itself away in here, which it's just done. And I can drag that guy out, so it's always there and I can see him. But I want to double click and bring up the control panel. So the XAMPP control panel is really good to get familiar with. And the other thing I'm going to do, because I'm going to use this a bit, I'm going to pin to the taskbar the XAMPP program icon so that I can easily launch it when I need to. And a couple of things I need to do. These are all different servers that I've got available, but we're really only going to use Apache and MySQL. Okay, so I'm going to click start the Apache web server, and that tells me that it's running on ports 80 and 443, and I know it's running because it's got this little green highlight over here, so that's all good. And I can test that that's running if I come to my web browser, whatever web browser I want to use, and I type local, L-O-C-A-L-H-O-S-T, and hit enter. And I get launched to this XAMPP or XAMPP dashboard. So I know that that's running, and the web server on the Apache web server on my local machine is working. So that's all good. And then when I want to run MySQL, my MySQL server, I click to start my MySQL server. Now, if it's the first time you've run your MySQL server, you should also see a little Windows firewall warning whether it wants to allow through the firewall. So tick the yes to allow private networks. box as well and tick allow, and then that should allow MySQL to run on your machine. We can see that it's running as well, and I can test that MySQL is running also if I come up to my address bar and have localhost / and I try and search for php myadmin, which will throw me to the PHP myadmin console if my database server is running correctly. PHP myadmin is a little graphical user interface that allows us to administer our MySQL databases, because by default MySQL is pretty nasty and it just has a console-driven, command-driven interface, which is not very pretty, hard to use. So my PHP myadmin just gives you some tools to allow you to manage that. We'll look more at how to use this and what it does as we move along our course. So that's pretty much it. The things to be aware of: making sure that you're stopping things. Oh, by the way, the Apache web server, those ports, some things get in the way of things like Skype if you've got Skype running, or some other programs sometimes. So if it's not allowing you to start, it might be because those ports are already in use, and that could be by other programs. Skype is a big example, so you might want to turn off or stop, close, exit from some programs on your computer to check that those things will work. But when we're finished and when we're done, we should always stop our two servers before we quit out of XAMPP, and then you're free to shut your lid and go put your computer to sleep and all that sort of stuff. Restarting your computer is another good trick if you've got issues with servers not trying to run. And the other thing is, sometimes everything gets in a knot and you might just have to completely uninstall XAMPP and start again. To do that, pretty easy really. You just come into C drive, and where that XAMPP folder was installed, you just delete that whole thing. Get rid of that whole folder, and that will allow you to run the XAMPP install process again and give it another go. So they're pretty much the highlights on how to install XAMPP. So from here we'll start learning about how to use some of those tools and how to work with databases, and some basics about using some dynamic or creating some dynamic web content. So we'll see you then.